good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And thank you to Rory and the whole team for inviting me. I feel somewhat honored to be asked to contribute to this discussion following just the last half an hour with the level of expertise that is in the room, the energy and the commitment that I sense here. So I'm very pleased to be here and I'm very happy to share some of the experiences from the German Energiewende. As you probably know, I'm not an expert on Ireland, so how I see my role today is to provide you with some of the glimpses, some of the experiences of the German discussion and how it relates to the topic today in terms of what was just mentioned in terms of energy democracy, the role of citizens, and why I think in comparison to other countries, in Germany, citizens play a crucial role in this energy transition. Now, I understand that you have been working the whole morning from 9 o'clock to 12 now, 3 hours of a lot of input. You must be full like a sponge now with information before you have the chance to really go into discussion. So I hope you still have some room left for some more input. But maybe I want to start it with some easing activity of showing hands. Who of you actually has been to Germany before over the last 10 years? Oh, that's many. Now, who of you has ridden a train in Germany at that time? And who of you has seen during that train ride windmills and solar panels on the roof? That's many hands. Actually, maybe I shouldn't speak anymore if you have all that experience. So what I would like to do is to give you an overview in terms of the broader goals of the Energiewende, and then go particular into the wind issue and the question of citizens and cooperatives. And my key question that I'm heading for is what actually has enabled German citizens to drive this transition to renewable energies? What were the factors? What was the framework that enabled citizens to invest in renewables and earn money with renewables? And I'm starting off with this picture. It's probably too small for you guys in the back to see, but it's a photo of the Dept wind farm that's in the state of Lower Saxony, where I grew up. And the particular aspect about this picture is that you see windmills from different ages over the last 20 years, different stage of technological innovation. And that is very typical. If you go on the ground in Germany, you will realize that the technology has been developing over the years. And this is today almost like a museum, except everything is still working, and even the old wind turbines, they're still making money. When we talk about the Energiewende, it's somewhat a loose idea what this is actually, this German energy transition. This is the attempt to summarize it in a nutshell. It consists of several targets, long-term, comprehensive policy, and is mentioned in the report, obviously, the Fukushima nuclear accident. That was one important moment in terms of being a catalytic moment for the Energiewende to accelerate this transition and to make firm commitments across all party lines. However, the Energiewende is much older and the discussion started much before. But what you should be aware of, or what you should know about it, is that the Energiewende is a comprehensive set of goals in terms of power production from renewables, combined heat and power productions, energy savings, a commitment to phase out nuclear power, and several targets also beyond the power sector, obviously. So it's very comprehensive. And in terms of my professional career over the last 6 years until 2013, I was working in the United States for international cooperation on these energy matters. And over there, you probably have followed that also, there's the slogan is energy all of the above. You know, we need all kinds of energies. That is very foreign to the German discussion. In the German laws and underlying the Energiewende, the priority is clearly set on renewable energies. That is set in the law, and that determines many of these policies. Now, when we take a closer look at the energy sector, this is a scenario for what could happen until 2050. So the main goal of the Energiewende is to provide 80% of the country's electricity from renewable sources. You see on the you can probably see it really. There's a rosé part and the gray part that is the nuclear power, which is being phased out by the year 2022. And you see phasing in of renewables, with a larger share coming from wind power. That is already currently today. Overall, Germany produces roughly per year 600 terawatt hours of electricity. I believe Ireland is somewhat between 28 up to 30 terawatt hours. Yeah, so this is the outlook on the power sector. If we go deeper into the renewables, electricity generation, this is the picture over the last 20 years roughly. And as you can see on the very bottom, the potential for hydropower is largely exhausted in Germany. There's not much more growth in that. But the strong growth of renewables has started basically since the early 2000s, mostly starting first of all with wind power, which is the lighter blue part, but also then from the mid-2000s more biomass, which is in Germany mostly biogas, anaerobic digesters, and then most lately solar power has also been growing much stronger. The latest figure on the slide is 23% of the country's power mix comes from renewables. That is 2012. 2013, the number is 25. And thank you. And the latest figure for the first half of 2014 is that renewables provide 31% of electricity in Germany, thanks to good weather conditions, thanks to lower exports that otherwise have been fed by coal power mostly. And the reason for this growth is indicated on the slide as well with policy dots, so to say. In the year 2000, the German Feed-in Tariff Act was passed, the Renewable Energy Law, which is a robust feed-in tariff policy that I think Ireland, I understand, is also using partially a feed-in tariff policy. And this policy was amended every once and so often. It needs constant updates to function well. And I can talk a little bit about the recent reform proposals that are going on in Germany, but there's some uncertainty there. Now, when we look into wind power in particular, we see that there has been a steady growth over the last 20 years as well. Roughly per year, we've added in Germany 1.5 to 2.5 gigawatts of wind power per year in terms of capacity. And overall, we have now installed roughly 33 gigawatts of wind power. There are three developments coming up, I think, on wind in terms of future growth. First of all, there are a couple of German states that in the past have been politically reluctant to enable more wind power in terms of planning processes. That has changed the political climate, so we will see a couple of states catching up on the development that otherwise already has happened across the country. We will then see also repowering starting to grow bigger, replacing all the smaller turbines with fewer new ones. And lastly, we will see developments on offshore wind power, which so far Germany is not really strong in and has been lagging so far. Now, I assume we have people in the room that are mostly convinced of the benefits of renewables and community-owned renewables, so I'm not going to advertise a lot about the energy security aspects, the climate impact, the jobs, but I wanted to show one slide, and that is about the investments. And I think this slide is also part of the story why this Energiewende in Germany is perceived as an economic benefit for the country, because there's a lot of money being just invested in local economies, and mostly not anymore, or fewer money is invested in buying fossil fuels from abroad, but more money is invested in installations at home, so to say. NESC in 2013, the investment in wind energy was 7 billion euros over the year. You also can see that 2010 and 2011, those were the peaks of investment. They have gone down since then, partially because of a slower solar growth since then, but also because these technologies have just been plummeting in price. So actually, that these investment numbers are going down is not necessarily a bad sign, so to say. Now, when we come closer to the topic of the role of citizens and the democratic element of the Energiewende, I wanted to show the ownership structure of renewables. So overall, In 2012, Germany had installed 73 gigawatts of renewables across the different technologies. And 47% of those are owned by citizens or by cooperatives. And through my international work that I've been doing before, this is an extraordinary high number. As you can see, traditional energy suppliers, that's the small part on the left-hand corners, only 12%. And if you're familiar with the German energy landscape, we have 4 big utilities that are dominating the market, and there are many small municipal utilities. So the big 4, they own only 5% of all renewables investment. They have a tiny fraction of this. So the one question is, why have utilities not really invested in renewables? The other question is, why did the citizens? And the reason for utilities is, there are several reasons. The Heinrich Böll Foundation in Washington, D.C., where I worked before, they came out with a new report. It's called the German Coal Conundrum, which tries to explain, is Germany building more coal plants to replace the nuclear power? But they looked actually into the question, why have big utilities not invested in renewables? And one of the main reasons they didn't is because the profit line of the feed-in tariff was too small for them. The 5 to 7% that you usually earn with feed-in tariffs over 20 years was not as much as they would earn traditionally with coal plants or with nuclear plants. So that explains their smaller share. And apart from citizens and cooperatives, you see on the left side 41% institutional and strategic investors, so this could be banks, could be insurances. And overall, I think what is striking here is the idea that the traditional electricity generation market has been opened up to new investors, has been opened up to competition. This is, of course, in part due to EU regulation, but it was mainly driven and incentivized by this feed-in tariff policy. Should I explain a little bit about how the policy works, or is that probably something that people are familiar with? Yeah? Different opinions? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'll do a quick one. The feed-in tariff works basically the way that if you invest in a windmill, you put up your windmill in Germany, you have guaranteed grid access. So the grid operator needs to connect you to the grid, and you're allowed to sell the electricity at a fixed price for 20 years. And this policy can have many different aspects to it, but in general, this provides a high certainty because you're responsible for the investment, and you know if you produce the power, then you can sell it at a fixed price, and that makes it very easy to calculate these projects, and also makes it easy for banks to say, yes, this is a good investment, I give you the money because I know you'll make you get your returns. So that's the feed-in tariff. Now we looked here 47% citizens and cooperatives. What are these citizens and cooperatives? And now there are some German slides to it that I will translate. But this 47% of renewable citizen energy is mainly split up in 3 different parts. 18 gigawatts of these investments have been done by individuals. They've been owned by individuals. 6 gigawatts by cooperatives and limited companies, we call them. And then 8 gigawatts of minority shares. That means that you as a citizen, you can buy a small share at somebody else's project. If we look only into the wind capacity that is installed in Germany, we can see that half of Germany's wind capacity is owned by citizens. Yeah, 10% by the utilities, roughly 40% by institutional investors, and in the broader sense, 50% by citizens. So wind technology is a technology where we have a comparably high share of citizens' ownership. And one of the reasons that is are these cooperatives. And this is a slide showing the number of cooperatives over the last 10 years in Germany. And as you can see, until 2006 there was not a lot of development. But from 2006 on, we had a blooming landscape of cooperatives in Germany, and the advantages of these are, of course, there are several advantages, but it's basically that you can bundle the technical and the business experience of the players. You can be part of the National Co-op Federation, which is an advantage in terms of support. And actually cooperatives in the German legal system are one of the best protected legal entities. So it's easy to operate, and it's easy to operate, let's put it that way. And traditionally, when these energy co-ops are set up, they start really slow, they start really small, and they usually start on one technology, so for example on wind. But over time these cooperatives grow, so they invite more people to take part, and it's usually a process that keeps on going on itself. So very traditionally would be that within a village people decide to form a cooperative and invest in a wind park. And they would start maybe with 20 people in the first year and with 2 turbines in the first year. And over 20 years, this would expand to almost all the citizens of the village, would expand to further wind turbines, but would also integrate new technologies. It would also then, this cooperative would after some years also invest money to put solar panels on the roof of the church. It's very common to have this kind of expansion, both in terms of quantity of more members and also in terms of a variety of electricity production. And of course the shares can be really small. It can start with 500 euros that you can buy a share of being a member of the cooperative. They can also go bigger, but the feature is that basically your one investment also is one vote within the cooperative, no matter how many shares you own. So in that sense, it's also quite democratic element. And I believe this high ownership in these renewable energy technologies in Germany, that contributes to the popularity of the whole project within Germany. You may know that Germany has one of the highest retail power prices, electricity prices, within Europe. And I do a lot of international work on the Energiewende. And when we talk about power prices and electricity prices, I often get the question of, well, you guys pay so high power prices, isn't there like a revolt going on? How can you proceed like this? We hardly have that discussion in Germany. There's such a high acceptance to go this way forward that has some costs, that I think high electricity prices are not the center of discussion in Germany. It also is reasoned by the fact that there's some good social welfare programs, of course. There's lower electricity consumption. But in general, this question on high electricity prices is something that I've been confronted much more in international work than domestically. And now, the last slide was about all cooperatives. This is a slide that shows the cooperatives in biomass, in photovoltaics, that is the middle column, and in wind energy on the right column. And as you can see in the middle column, photovoltaic, for example, is clearly shown that there are a lot of institutional and strategic investors, and then there are a lot of individual owners, people who put solar panels up on their roof. So there's not many cooperatives that are only going for solar. We have the highest cooperative share within the wind, that is the light green part on the right-hand side, which is, I would say, roughly from the numbers, I would say 5,000 megawatts installed capacity. And when I did the preparation for this for this discussion today, I asked myself, well, what is it actually? What is happening in Germany, and why is that not happening in other countries in terms of this ownership of people? And when I walked through these slides, and also when I read the report, I came to these three pillars or three corners of a triangle. The first one is that in the German framework overall, that you have a high level of political and policy certainty. There are these long-term goals, long-term targets. Everybody knows we are basically shifting to a renewable energy economy. It's just a question of how we go there, not if we go there. That includes, for example, the certainty that nuclear power will be shut down by 2022. We need other capacity to replace that. That certainty is very important for people to make these decisions for new investments. Part of this certainty is also the priority access for renewables. You have many other countries where renewables have much more favorable conditions, and they're being slowed down by grid operators or by utilities claiming, well, sorry, the grid is already full, we cannot take this extra load, come back the next day. In Germany, basically, that is not happening. Neither your investment projects are rejected, nor once you produce electricity, that can hardly be rejected by the grid operator. So it's a very secure business to operate renewables. Then the second pillar of this certainty is the financing aspect to it. I explained before the payments for feed-in tariffs. They are for 20 years. They are calculated in a way that they should provide you with a return of investment of something between 5 to 7%, depending on technology, depending on size, depending on the location where you are. But beyond that, there are also several public finance programs to invest in these programs. For example, we have it's called the Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau. It's a public bank. And they've developed standardized procedures that is being used by commercial banks. And often these renewable energy contracts, to sell the power, they're very simple. They're like a 3-pager. My American colleagues told me over there when they develop renewable energy projects, they have to, every contract is different. It's 70 to 80 pages long. You have to pay high costs for lawyers to be on the safe side. In Germany, it's very simple. And banks are very eager to give you money for that. We did a special program on farmers and renewable energies in Bavaria and in the Midwestern part of the United States. And Bavarian folks told us, well, when we go to a bank and ask them, should we expand our dairy operation or should we invest in wind power or biomass? The bank usually says, well, you know your business with dairy and it looks okay, but there are some uncertainties there. We know that the renewable energy business is a safe one for you. We give you the better conditions to invest in renewable energies. That's how banks are seeing this business. So it's a good financing package overall. And the third cornerstone is the planning process. I think there's some valid, some excellent information in the report also that you looked into the Danish example and the German example and how quick the planning processes can be. I'm not familiar with the situation in Ireland. I think part of that, what is also relevant for, let's say, for local authorities and citizens to go forward with renewables on the ground is the question of tax revenue. And in Germany there was a tax reform in 2009 that decided that the revenues from the trade tax, basically 70% of that revenue stream from operating wind turbines, for example, goes to the municipality where the wind turbines are located. Only 30% go to the municipality where the owner of the wind turbine is located at. So the Americans, again, they told me, well, in our communities we often have the problem of people not being supportive for these projects, and the reason is outside investors are coming there, they're making the money, but the wind turbines are mostly seen as a disturbance. In Germany, the wind turbines are the same. They make noises, sometimes they throw shadows depending on the location, but many people in those areas, for them, those noises are not disturbing, but they are a sign of making money. It's like a click, click, click. So it's very much, I think the whole issue of engaging people is very relevant. And I skipped the part in my presentation when I wanted to lose a few words about the excellent report, which reminds me right now. And that is the question of ownership. Is one of the aspects that I realized. First of all, I think the report, it's a very timely contribution. As I understand, Ireland is on the way in terms of its EU obligation to go to 40% renewables by 2020 in the power sector. It's obvious that wind energy has to play a big part of that. And it's obvious that so for wind power to play that strong role, it's very important. Second, the German experience tells me that if you want to go to transition to, or to make renewable energy as a strong pillar of the energy economy, to transition to 20% or 40% or even more, it's not possible without communities, and it's not possible against the interest or the will of the people. Yeah, so I think this participation and support of communities in the transition is important, otherwise it will be slower, it will be also costlier. And third, I was very encouraged to see that in the report that you looked abroad, we say in German, across your own plate. Yeah? You look to other countries that have moved forward on this, and I find this kind of policy learning, given the previous positions that I had, I find that very encouraging. What I realized is when, on a similar discussion in Germany, there are a couple of points that would be mentioned or would be added on, I think. And the one question I think was from the gentleman over here from the cooperatives, that it's not only a matter of participation to involve communities. For many Germans, it's a matter of ownership. Many of these folks, they want to produce their own clean power, and they don't want any utilities to tell them what to do and what not to do. I think that's a very strong argument in the German discussion. The second was raised by a gentleman in the back, I think. I can't read the name right now, but yes, here in the white shirt. And that's the question of, well, how does, we know that wind power is for sure the most relevant in terms of absolute production, very likely for Ireland, as I understand it. But when we go to 40% or even more renewables, it will be a matter of how these different sources play together. In Germany now, with roughly 30% of renewables electricity production, we already realize what impact it has, for example, if you have substantial solar power in the mix. That comes at certain day times, but it also comes seasonal at certain times. And for example, we realize in Germany how well solar power and wind power complement each other, how well they go hand in hand, and how good of a partner they are actually. And this is again also an experience by these cooperatives. Most of them not only go to one source, but they include different sources. So the change to a renewable energy system must of course include wind, and there should be good knowledge about how to do that, but it's important to integrate the other aspects. And let me mention that, for example, biogas is something that on the slide is quite relevant in Germany, but it was previously designed that just like for the feed-in tariff for wind or solar power, whenever you produce electricity from biogas, you get the same payment back in terms of feed-in tariff. That was designed 10 years ago. Today you would design it in a different way, because we have nowadays when solar power and wind power produce 50% or more of electricity. The grid is full, the prices are below zero sometimes, so you have to pay actually to put more electricity to the grid. Now that's a time when, if you can shut down a biogas plant and not produce electricity, that would actually be wise to do, because there will be other times when that electricity is more needed. Yeah? So that's something, some learning also when these technologies mature. And last but not least, from the discussion, also from the report, what I have no sense so far is of the elephant in the room. What is the role of traditional utilities? Now, when you think about in terms of theoretic approach, how you do a transition of a status quo program, you basically have two options with a strong economic interest in the status quo program. The one option is you can teach the old dogs new tricks. You can ask these utilities to change their business and incentivize this business change. Or you say, well, these utilities are around, these old dogs are there, but we rather want to enable other dogs to join the game, to join this market. And I think that's what the Germans did. They opened up the market, and today the utilities, they say they have invested too late and too little in renewables. Their cake of market each year has been eaten up by others because of citizens making these investments and renewables enjoying priority access. So I think that the German story is a solid argument to say, well, let's open up the playground for everyone. Last point is the active communities in the middle. That is something that is very difficult in terms of, I don't even know if you want to address it politically, if you want to change it, but I just want to leave you with the idea that there's also a certain mentality in Germany, especially in these rural areas, of people wanting to become power producers. It's something that they want in terms of their mentality. As I said before, they don't want to ask the big corporations to do something for them, but they rather want to do it themselves. They think it's better for their communities to be active and to produce this power. They also value community benefits over profits. So when you join these cooperatives, the profit margins are not that high. People do it because they think it's the right thing to do. And I think overall, no matter how you design the triangle, but the best policy certainty, that doesn't work if you don't have the people who are really, who want this and who are driving this. So I want to leave you with the takeaway of these, the certainties in terms of policies, finances, and planning that actually have provided or empowered the German citizens to produce their own energy and drive the transition to a renewable energy economy. This is a website, energytransition.de, that I helped to set up. You can find more information on all the policy details up there. Also the Twitter account is quite active there. So I think, to sum it up, from the German experience, without the communities, without cooperatives, there's no way that this transition can happen so quickly and at rather low cost. And I hope this helps to inspire the discussion over here. Thank you very much.